Germans ultimately produced about 1,300 Me-262s, of which they got 300 in combat. And at the time, we were putting 1,000 bombers and 1,000 fighters over Germany in a day.
During World War II, Nazi Germany created some of the most terrifying and bizarre machines the world had ever seen. As the war ended, many of these experimental and oversized vehicles were abandoned, left to rust in forests, buried in bunkers, or forgotten in remote corners of Europe. Some were monstrous tanks never completed. Others were odd prototypes that defied logic. For decades, they lay hidden, waiting to be rediscovered. Now, through incredible finds and painstaking restoration efforts, these chilling relics have come back into view. From amphibious motorcycles to aerial rotor-kites and asymmetrical planes, each one tells a story of ambition, fear, and failure. Join us as we explore 20 of the strangest Nazi vehicles ever unearthed, ghostly machines that still whisper from the shadows of a dark and desperate era. Number 20. The Landkreuzer P1000 Ratt. In the annals of World War II military engineering, few ideas matched the absurd scale of the Landkreuzer P1000 Ratt. Commissioned by Hitler himself, the Ratt was envisioned as the largest tank ever created, stretching 115 feet long, weighing over 1,000 tons, and requiring a crew of more than 20 men. It would have sported naval guns as its main weapons, along with anti-aircraft defenses and thick armor capable of withstanding almost any enemy fire. But it never made it beyond the planning stage. Blueprints and partial components were drafted and manufactured by Krupp, but practical concerns doomed the project. The Ratt would have been too massive for most roads and bridges, and its fuel consumption would have crippled supply lines. Worse, it would have been an enormous, slow-moving target, vulnerable from the air and impossible to hide. After the war, historians uncovered long-lost design documents and rusted prototype parts in a sealed bunker near Berlin, revealing just how far Nazi engineers were willing to go in pursuit of Hitler's megalomania. The idea of building a land battleship wasn't just impractical, it bordered on madness. Today, remnants and models of the P1000 Ratt can be seen at Germany's Military Technical Museum in Koblenz, where they remain a chilling symbol of the extremes of Nazi ambition. The Ratt never rolled onto a battlefield, but it rolled straight into the darkest corners of military imagination. Proof that not every monster needs to be real to be terrifying. The Fiseler Phi 103R, also known as the Reichenberg, was Nazi Germany's manned version of the infamous Phi 1 flying bomb. Number 19 Fiseler Phi 103R, Reichenberg. Developed in 1944, it was essentially a V-1 fitted with a cockpit, allowing a pilot to guide the missile toward its target. Intended as a desperation weapon, the project reflected Germany's increasingly dire wartime situation. Unlike the V-1, which was unmanned and launched from ramps or aircraft, the Reichenberg was meant to be piloted by a volunteer who would crash it into enemy targets. Despite this, it was not officially labeled a self-harm weapon. Theoretically, the pilot was expected to bail out moments before impact, though survival was extremely unlikely due to the high speed and low altitude of the final approach. Several prototypes were built and tested, including unpowered gliding versions and later powered variants. Hanna Reich, a famous German test pilot, flew several of them and reported serious control difficulties, especially at higher speeds. The program was part of the Leonidas Squadron, a Luftwaffe unit reportedly organized for self-sacrifice missions, though there's no verified evidence that any Reichenberg was ever used operationally in combat. After Germany's surrender, some partially completed units were discovered in storage at the aircraft factory in Dannenberg, and others were found at the Nordhausen underground facility. One preserved example now resides in the RAF Museum in London. The Kougal Panzer, or spherical tank, is one of the most enigmatic military vehicles ever associated with Nazi Germany. Only one known example exists, and it was captured by Soviet forces in Manchuria during World War II, far from the European front lines. Number 18. The Kougal Panzer. This small one-man vehicle resembles a metal ball with two large outer wheels and a small stabilizing tail wheel. It has no known armament, only a slit for vision, and was powered by a small engine, likely intended for short-range use. The exact purpose of the Kougal Panzer remains unknown. Theories range from reconnaissance and communications to laying telephone cables or conducting light patrols in secure areas. The vehicle was sent from Nazi Germany to Imperial Japan during their wartime alliance and somehow ended up in Manchuria, possibly for field testing by the Japanese Kwantung Army. No documents have been found to explain its full design, deployment, or intended use. There is also no evidence that more than one was ever built. Today, the Kougal Panzer is preserved at the Kubinka Tank Museum outside Moscow, where it draws significant attention due to its strange appearance and mysterious history. It's painted a dull silver gray and remains unrestored, with its internal mechanisms mostly intact but not operational. Due to the complete lack of surviving blueprints or official documentation, the Kougal Panzer is one of the few World War II military machines whose origin and function remain unsolved, an abandoned relic from a forgotten project that never made it past the experimental stage. Number 17. Messerschmitt Me 323 Gigantic. The Messerschmitt Me 323 Gigantic was the largest land-based transport aircraft used in World War II. Developed from the earlier glider model, the Me 323, it was fitted with 6 engines to allow for powered flight and mass cargo transport. It could carry up to 10 to 12 tons of equipment, or around 120 fully equipped soldiers, an extraordinary capability at the time. Intended to support rapid deployment of men and materials, especially during campaigns like the invasion of the Soviet Union and North Africa, the Me 323 proved to be a logistical solution and a tactical vulnerability. The aircraft was slow, lightly armed, and highly susceptible to enemy fire. Entire squadrons were lost during Allied air raids, particularly in 1943, when a group of Me 323s was destroyed over the Mediterranean while transporting troops to Tunisia. Most of these massive aircraft were destroyed in combat or scrapped after the war, but a partial wreck was discovered in 2012 off the coast of Sardinia, Italy. Divers found large sections of a submerged Me 323, including portions of the fuselage and wing struts. The site was later identified using historical flight records and confirmed by serial numbers recovered from the wreckage. No complete Me 323 survives today, but some parts are preserved in museums. The aircraft remains a fascinating example of Nazi Germany's efforts to overcome logistical challenges with sheer size. Its limited success underscores the problem of designing big machines without adequate protection or support in increasingly hostile skies. Number 16. Panzer the 8 Voss. The Panzerkampfwagen, the 8 Maus, was Nazi Germany's most ambitious tank design ever completed. Conceived by Ferdinand Porsche and authorized by Hitler, the Maus was intended to be a breakthrough heavy tank, virtually indestructible on the battlefield. Weighing approximately 188 metric tons, it remains the heaviest fully enclosed armored fighting vehicle ever built. Only 2 prototypes were produced before the war ended. One was a functioning vehicle with a working turret. The other had only a chassis. Due to its massive size and weight, the Maus was too heavy for most bridges and could only cross rivers via fording or custom-built support equipment. It was equipped with a powerful 128 mm main gun and a coaxial 75mm secondary gun, both designed to take on any Allied armor. Despite its formidable armament and armor, the Maus was impractical. It was extremely slow, mechanically unreliable, and vulnerable to air attack. The project was eventually halted in late 1944 due to resource shortages and shifting priorities. After Germany's defeat, the Soviets captured the two prototypes at the Kummersdorf proving grounds and combined parts of both into a single display vehicle. This hybrid Maus was transported to the Kubinka Tank Museum in Russia, where it remains today, the only surviving example. The Maus was never used in combat. It represents an extreme in tank design. Impressive on paper, yet ultimately unfeasible in real war conditions. Next is the Shenan Wolf, German for rail wolf, was a railway demolition vehicle used by Nazi forces during World War II to destroy train tracks during strategic withdrawals. Number 15. The Shenan Wolf. Its design was simple but effective. A heavy-duty rail car fitted with a giant plow or claw, dragged behind a locomotive to tear up rails as it moved. These devices were deployed particularly on the Eastern Front, where retreating German forces aimed to cripple Soviet supply routes and slow the Red Army's advance. The claw dug deep into the ties and ballast, violently uprooting and twisting steel rails behind the train. In many cases, the destruction was so thorough that rebuilding the track took weeks or even months. Unlike combat vehicles or advanced weaponry, the Shenan Wolf had no armor or weaponry. Its value was purely tactical, disabling the infrastructure the enemy relied on. Several models existed, but they all followed the same core principle. The vehicle was often operated with little documentation, and most were destroyed, repurposed, or left behind after the war. One remarkably intact example was discovered decades later in a sealed rail tunnel in Poland, concealed under debris and vegetation. The claw, still connected to its frame, was rusted but recognizable. The vehicle is now preserved and displayed in a local Polish railway museum, offering a rare glimpse into the lesser-known logistical tools of the Nazi military machine. Number 14. BMW R75 with Sidecar. The BMW R75 with Sidecar was a versatile motorcycle used by the German Wehrmacht throughout World War II. Designed for rugged terrain and battlefield utility, the R75 was more than just a two-wheeler. It had a powered sidecar wheel connected by a drive shaft, allowing it to handle mud, snow, and steep inclines more effectively than conventional motorcycles. These vehicles were commonly used for reconnaissance, dispatch, and troop mobility, and could even be fitted with machine guns for combat roles. They were produced between 1941 and 44, with over 16,000 units built. In 2007, hikers in Germany's Black Forest came across a remarkable find: an abandoned BMW R75 with its sidecar still attached, partially buried under layers of moss and forest debris. Despite decades of exposure, the bike was largely intact. Its tires were deflated, but the frame, engine block, and saddle were well preserved. The vehicle still bore faded Wehrmacht markings and leather saddlebags with deteriorated contents, including rusted tools, and a fragment of a field map were found nearby. Experts who later examined the motorcycle suggested it may have been abandoned during a retreat in the closing months of the war. There's no evidence it was destroyed or intentionally hidden. More likely, it simply broke down and was left behind. Number 13. Ju-87 Stooka Dive Bomber. The Junkers Ju-87, famously known as the Stooka, was Nazi Germany's primary dive bomber during the early years of World War II. Recognized for its distinctive gull wing shape and terrifying dive sirens, the Stooka was a symbol of blitzkrieg tactics, especially during the invasions of Poland and France. However, by the later years of the war, It had become increasingly vulnerable to faster Allied aircraft. One of the few surviving examples was discovered in 2015, submerged in a Norwegian fjord near the coastal town of Ålesund. The aircraft had crash-landed during a Luftwaffe mission in the region, likely in 1940 during the Norwegian campaign. Cold water and low oxygen levels helped preserve its structure remarkably well. Divers who found the aircraft noted that the fuselage, wings, and parts of the tailplane were still intact. Luftwaffe insignia was visible on the wing, and the canopy, though shattered, remained partially attached. Recovery teams, working with aviation historians and Norwegian authorities, confirmed the plane's identity through serial numbers and engine markings. The aircraft was raised from the fjord with care and transported to a conservation facility. Though heavily corroded, restoration teams aimed to stabilize and display the wreck as part of Norway's war heritage. The discovery was significant due to the rarity of surviving Stookas. Fewer than a dozen partial examples exist today. Number 12. SDK KFC2 Kettra. The SDK KFC2 Kettra was one of the most unusual utility vehicles used by the German military during World War II. It combined the front end of a motorcycle with the rear tracks of a small tank, creating a compact half-track vehicle capable of navigating difficult terrain. Initially developed for use by airborne troops, it proved so effective that it was adopted widely across different fronts. Powered by a 1.5-liter Opel engine, the Kettenkrad could tow light artillery, lay communication cables, or carry ammunition and personnel. Its unique design gave it excellent maneuverability, and it could even fit inside larger aircraft for air transport. Over 8,000 units were produced between 1940 and 1944. One abandoned Kettenkrad was discovered in the early 2000s in a bombed-out farmhouse in northern France. Hidden under layers of collapsed roof beams and rubble, it had been shielded from the elements for decades. Though covered in dust and rust, the vehicle was largely intact, including its original treads, engine casing, and the motorcycle-style front wheel. Military historians believe the vehicle was left behind during a hurried German retreat and forgotten as the war moved on. Restoration experts carefully extracted the vehicle and found that, with effort, many of its parts could be preserved. It was later restored and is now occasionally run at historical reenactment events. Number 11. V2 Rocket Transport Train. The V2 rocket was Nazi Germany's most advanced long-range weapon, a ballistic missile capable of striking targets over 300 kilometers away. It was the world's first operational missile of its kind, and its deployment required a highly mobile support system, including special transport trains designed to move and launch these weapons in secrecy. One such train was discovered in the 90s, deep in the Ardennes forest in Belgium, inside a partially collapsed tunnel that had been sealed since the end of the war. Local legends had long circulated about a ghost train hidden underground, but it wasn't until surveys for a new road project led to accidental excavation that the site was rediscovered. Inside the tunnel, researchers found several flatbed rail cars fitted with large mounts and support cradles designed to carry V2 components. Though the rockets themselves were gone, fragments of launch equipment and fuel containers were still present. Some sections of the cars bore identification codes linking them to known V2 logistical units that had operated in Western Europe during late 1944. Historians believe this train was abandoned as the Allies advanced during the Battle of the Bulge. Rather than risk capture, the Germans may have collapsed the tunnel deliberately or simply fled before demolishing it. Today, the site is sealed off for preservation, though some parts of the train and its equipment were removed for study. The discovery adds to the understanding of how Germany attempted to hide and deploy its most devastating weapon under the cover of Europe's terrain. Number 10. Goliath Track Mine. The Goliath Tracked Mine, officially named Leichter Ladungsträger Goliath, was a small, remote-controlled demolition vehicle used by Nazi Germany during World War II. Designed to deliver explosives directly to enemy positions, it was essentially a motorized bomb on tracks. Produced by manufacturers like Borgard and Zundap, the Goliath came in both gasoline and electric-powered versions and carried up to 100 kilograms of high explosives. Controlled via a spool of wire, typically 600 meters long, the operator would guide the Goliath toward its target, such as tanks, bridges, or fortified bunkers, before triggering detonation. Despite its clever concept, the Goliath had several limitations. It was slow, lightly armored, and highly vulnerable to small arms fire. The wire guidance system could easily be severed, rendering the vehicle useless before it reached its target. Still, thousands were produced and deployed, particularly on the Eastern Front and during the Normandy campaign. One abandoned Goliath was discovered decades later in a field near Caen, France. Buried in soft soil and covered by vegetation, it had escaped post-war salvage efforts. Upon excavation, the vehicle was found largely intact, though its explosive payload had deteriorated. Bomb disposal experts safely removed and neutralized the contents before the vehicle was transferred to a local military museum. Number 9. Focke-Wulf Triebflugel. The Focke-Wulf Triebflugel, also known as the thrust wing, was one of Nazi Germany's most unusual experimental aircraft designs. Proposed in 1944, it was a vertical takeoff and landing VTOL interceptor meant to defend German cities against Allied bombers when runways were no longer available. The Triebflugel's most distinctive feature was its rotating wing assembly, which acted like a giant propeller. 3 wings with jet engines at their tips would spin around the fuselage, generating both lift and forward thrust. The aircraft would take off vertically, transition to horizontal flight, and land vertically again, a concept far ahead of its time. Although detailed blueprints and a wind tunnel model were completed, no full-scale prototype was ever constructed. The war ended before the Triebflugel could leave the drawing board. However, in the late 1940s, Allied forces discovered these documents and a partial mock-up at Focke-Wulf's facilities in Bad Eilsen, Germany. The design has since drawn comparisons to later VTOL aircraft, including the American Harrier and various Cold War-era test vehicles. The Triebflugel remains a symbol of Nazi Germany's push for advanced aerospace concepts in the final stages of the war. Despite its futuristic appearance, engineers agree it would have been extremely difficult to control, and transitioning from vertical to horizontal flight would have posed major aerodynamic and stability challenges. No actual Triebflugel has ever been found or flown, but full-size replicas based on recovered plans have been built for museum displays, offering a glimpse into one of the most bizarre and ambitious aircraft designs ever realized. The Tatra T87, a sleek and advanced Czechoslovak car, wasn't a combat vehicle, but it was heavily used by high-ranking Nazi officers, especially on the Eastern Front. Number 8. Tatra T87. With its rear-mounted air-cooled V8 engine, streamlined body, and high-speed capability, the T87 was perfect for long-range travel across Nazi-occupied territory. Ironically, its speed made it infamous among German officers. So many crashed and died while speeding through unfamiliar terrain that some units reportedly restricted its use. After the war, dozens of abandoned or destroyed T-87s were found across Poland, Ukraine, and former Czechoslovakia, some wrecked in forests or left at the roadside during retreats. Unlike the brutal military machines of the Reich, the Tatra was a product of elegance and innovation. Today, surviving examples are rare collector's items, but several rusted hulks have been found in barns or open fields, frozen remnants of Nazi overreach. Its presence on the battlefield wasn't as a weapon, but as a tool of elite mobility, making the Tatra T87 one of the strangest and deadliest vehicles of the Nazi era, in its own ironic way. Number 7. Dornier D335 Fiel. The Dornier D335 Fiel Aero was one of Nazi Germany's fastest piston-engine aircraft, featuring an innovative push-pull configuration with two engines, one in the nose and another in the tail. This setup reduced drag and gave the aircraft astonishing speed for its time, reaching up to 474 mph, faster than many early Allied jets. Introduced very late in the war, the D335 was designed as a high-speed heavy fighter, capable of intercepting bombers and outrunning enemy fighters. It featured advanced technology for its time, including an ejection seat, tricycle landing gear, and automatic dive brakes. However, only a small number were completed before Germany surrendered, likely fewer than 40. After the war, a single surviving D333 was shipped to the U.S. as part of Operation Seahorse, where Allied forces gathered captured German aircraft for study. Decades later, in the 1990s, the Smithsonian Institution's National Air and Space Museum partnered with Germany's Dornier company to fully restore this rare aircraft using original components and specifications. Another abandoned airframe was found in Bavaria in the 1970s, stored in a decaying hangar on a former Luftwaffe airfield. Though too far gone to restore, its structure confirmed production beyond the surviving prototype. Number 6. The Schwimvagen. The Volkswagen Schwimvagen was Nazi Germany's answer to the need for a lightweight, amphibious vehicle capable of traversing water and rough terrain. Based on the VW Kübelwagen and using the same rear-mounted engine design as the classic Beetle, it was modified to include a watertight body, a retractable propeller, and paddle-like wheels for basic aquatic navigation. More than 15,000 Schwimvagens were produced between 1942 and 1944, making it the most mass-produced amphibious car in history. It was used primarily by reconnaissance units, engineers, and other specialized forces operating in flooded areas, rivers, and coastal zones, especially on the Eastern Front. After the war, many Schwimvagens were abandoned in rivers, lakes, and swamps, either due to damage or fuel shortages. Over the decades, some were recovered from lakes in Poland, rivers in Ukraine, and even muddy banks in France, often covered in rust, but surprisingly intact due to their sealed hulls and oil-preserved interiors. Restored Schwimvagens occasionally appear at military vehicle shows or vintage car rallies, complete with functioning propellers and oars. A handful still operate both on land and in water, showing the design's durability and practicality even 80 years later. Number 5. Fokker-Achilles Fa330. The Fokker-Achilles Fa330 Bachstelze, also called Wagtail, was one of the strangest aerial devices used by Nazi Germany, a rotor kite designed to be towed behind German U-boats. It wasn't a helicopter in the traditional sense, but rather a small manned autogyro that used the submarine's forward motion to spin its rotor and lift a single observer into the air. The Fa330 gave U-boat crews an aerial vantage point of up to 400 feet, vastly extending the range of their visual reconnaissance. It was lightweight, collapsible, and could be launched or retrieved quickly, though deploying it exposed the submarine to danger by forcing it to remain on the surface. Due to this risk, it was mainly used in the calmer waters of the Indian Ocean. Roughly 200 units were built, but very few saw regular deployment. After the war, most were dismantled or forgotten. However, a nearly complete Fa330 was discovered in storage at a former Luftwaffe testing site in the 1970s still created and never assembled. The fragile structure of aluminum tubes, canvas seat, and two-blade rotor had remained largely intact. Today, surviving examples are extremely rare. One can be seen at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, while others exist in German and British aviation museums. Though it never changed the tide of war, the Fa-330 stands as a symbol of Nazi Germany's experimental approach to warfare, one where even submarines had aircraft. Number 4. Blom and Voss, BV-141. The Blom and Voss BV-141 was a highly unconventional German tactical reconnaissance plane featuring an offset cockpit gondola on the starboard side and the engine nacelle on the port side, designed to maximize observer visibility. First flown in early 1938, the BV-141 proved aerodynamically stable and performed well. However, only 3 prototypes and around 5 pre-production A models, followed by about 12 B variants powered by BMW 801 engines, were built. Sources vary between 20 and 28 total aircraft delivered. Despite its innovative layout, it never entered mass service due to engine shortages and the Luftwaffe's preference for the twin-engine FW-189, which proved more practical. No intact BV-141s survive today. Wrecks were captured and evaluated by Allied forces, but all were eventually scrapped. The design remains a striking example of German experimental aviation during World War II. Number 3. Borgard IV. The Borgard IV was Nazi Germany's ambitious attempt to use remote-controlled demolition vehicles on the battlefield. Built by Carl F. W. Borgard and Company, this small, tracked vehicle was designed to carry and deliver high explosives to enemy positions, while the operator controlled it via radio from a safe distance. Weighing around 2.4 tons, the Borgard IV was far larger than other remote weapons, like the Goliath tracked mine, and had the unique ability to drop its explosive charge before retreating. This made it theoretically reusable, though in practice, most were destroyed during or shortly after their missions. 3 main variants were produced from 1942 to 1945 with over 600 units built. They were deployed mostly on the Eastern Front and during the Warsaw Uprising, but with limited success. Their thin armor and unreliable control systems made them easy targets for Allied forces, and they were often captured or abandoned during retreats. In the decades after the war, several rusting Borgard IVs were discovered, some in Eastern European forests, others buried in fields or left in Wehrmacht storage sites. One was found in surprisingly good condition inside a collapsed barn in rural Poland in the 90s. Today, restored examples can be seen at the German Tank Museum in Munster and other military museums across Europe. Though it didn't revolutionize warfare, the Borgard IV offers a glimpse into the early development of unmanned combat systems, foreshadowing the drones and remote weapons of modern battlefields. Number 2. The tracked motorcycle, one of the strangest vehicles left behind after Nazi Germany's fall, was the NSU Kettenkrad, a half-motorcycle, half-tank hybrid, officially known as the SDK KFC2. This small tracked vehicle was originally designed for airborne troops, narrow enough to fit inside transport aircraft, yet powerful enough to haul artillery or equipment through rugged terrain. The Kettenkrad looked like something out of science fiction, a motorcycle front wheel with handlebars combined with rear tank-like treads. It was powered by a 1.5 L Opel engine, giving it impressive off-road capabilities. Though lightly armored, it proved incredibly useful in a variety of roles, from cable laying to towing aircraft on airfields. After World War II, many Kettenkrads were abandoned in fields, forests, and hidden alpine tunnels, especially as the Third Reich collapsed. Restorers were able to bring it back to working condition, highlighting the machine's quirky, over-engineered design. Several Kettenkrads now exist in museums and private collections, still operational. While it never became a dominant battlefield vehicle, the Kettenkrad stands out as a bizarre wartime invention, built for utility, but remembered for its Frankenstein-like form. Number 1. 100 Supertank. The Panzerkampfwagen E100 was Nazi Germany's last attempt to build a super-heavy tank, intended to rival the Maus and form part of a new standardized E-series. Designed to weigh over 130 tons, it would have mounted a 150 mm main gun and a 75 mm secondary weapon, with a focus on using simpler leaf spring suspension for easier production. However, the war's final months crushed these ambitions. Only a single hull was partially assembled and transported to a test site in Haustenbeck in 1945. Before final assembly, British forces discovered the unfinished E100, bogged down and abandoned as Germany collapsed. It was later shipped to the UK for study, but ultimately scrapped. While it never saw combat, the EOE-100 remains a striking example of Nazi Germany's fixation on wonder weapons. Had it been completed, it would likely have suffered the same problems as the Maus: overwhelming weight, limited mobility, and impractical logistics. Today, only wartime photographs and blueprints remain, symbolizing a final, desperate chapter in German armored warfare. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.